Hey everyone, this is Dan here. Just with a quick note before we jump into today's episode. I hope you are all healthy and safe during this COVID situation. Just wanted to wait a little while between the last episode and this one for that whole thing to sort of level out a little bit before releasing this. But it's a really amazing episode with Micah, recorded at Tech SEO Boost in Boston. So I hope you enjoy it.
This is the Digital Marketing Experts Podcast episode. No, why am I trying to sound like a radio announcer?
Experts in the Wire, episode 115. Micah Fisher-Kirshner. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 115 of Experts on the Wire. This is the last of the 3 episodes that were recorded at Tech SEO Boost in Boston. When we could actually go places. But it's still all very relevant for SEO now. There is one spot that I realized we talked about the benefits of meeting people in person, whether you're working in-house or working for clients. I'd be curious to hear of any ways that people have achieved these benefits, but in a remote work environment. You can feel free to message me on Twitter, DAN_SHURE. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. But you're going to learn so much from my guest, Micah. He had some really great things to talk about, including how to do SEO for big, large sets of content. In fact, he used to work with Zendesk, and he talked about optimizing their help center documentation for SEO. We talked about crawl optimization in general, but also during high traffic periods on seasonal sites. He also talked about how can you spot a company that could be successful with SEO or that has red flags that point towards dangers of their SEO. This could be valuable whether you are analyzing competitors, maybe looking for clients to work for or vetting those clients, maybe looking for a good in-house situation. It's a valuable skill for so many applications to know when a site could be successful with SEO or not. We also talk about something Micah is very passionate about and what his entire talk at Tech SEO Boost back in December was all about. And that is how to actually do a proper SEO ranking analysis. I'm sure, like me, when you do this, you maybe sit down, you throw a competitor's domain or a domain you're analyzing into Moz. You look at domain authority, you look at link metrics, maybe you look at their speed, maybe you crawl their site to try to get a sense for their technical stability and accessibility, etc. But Micah has a process and sort of a blueprint for this that is actually based upon real data science and provides solid, statistical, significant data that you could analyze and actually properly do a ranking analysis. So it's very fascinating stuff that he shared. And we also did a little quick round of talking through certain things that are thought to be ranking factors, like EAT, click-through rate, pogo sticking, and whether or not he actually thinks those are myths or actual ranking factors that you should pay attention to. I hope you enjoy this episode from your home, or maybe if you're in the future and we're all out of lockdown at that point, wherever you are in the future. Okay, I hope you enjoy episode 115 of Experts on the Wire. We are here at Tech SEO Boost with Micah. I want to jump straight in because you have a very interesting background. You started in e-commerce and then switched to B2B. I'd love to chat a little bit about the differences between those and then what it's like making that switch. And I kind of want to take like an 80-20 approach. So meaning, what are some of the biggest factors, the biggest needle movers that you saw in e-commerce? And then how is that different in B2B?
I think it was probably the most interesting thing for me on the e-commerce side. For me at the larger scale, it was what were kind of almost like the layouts.
Yeah.
And this is kind of, let's say, pre a lot of the schema implementations of how can we make it built in the way that actually felt like it both satisfied the user, but laid out everything that had a real rich content in kind of the e-commerce setting. Whereas I feel the larger difference in the B2B world was the fact that it was turning them into kind of more of a, actually, if people are searching for this, write for that and have content in that area. And it's a very
And so by
different
layout, you mean like the physical appearance of the page itself, the UX,
UX itself, but it's also kind of essentially a lot of the satisfying the user intent, but it's having a lot of the actual content that directly is what people are looking for, either earlier or in ways of which it's covering kind of all the bases.
Yeah.
But whereas the B2B side they weren't even near that step, and it's kind of like going back a number of years in SEO and saying like, no, if people are searching, you need to actually have a page on said subject, rather than kind of trying to minimize your site itself.
Yeah, and what was the e-commerce situation that you worked in? Was it one company? Did you consult for e-com?
It was across the board. I started in the agency world at an old, and now it kind of got bought up agency, and worked on a couple of e-commerce sites there. Then I went in-house. I actually worked in comparison shopping before that industry was taken under. And then I worked at a smaller company selling that their main product was artificial Christmas trees. Which is always kind of was a fun time, highly stressful given the seasonality there. And then as well worked at massive scale at Zazzle, which was a custom e-commerce product marketplace. So total kind of the gamut of the e-com world that way.
And so when you're talking about page layout and then keyword alignment, so let's take the artificial Christmas tree. It's a fun example. Does that literally mean like if somebody is searching artificial Christmas tree and then what you're giving to them as content on that page, is that sort of what you're talking about there, is like satisfying what the user might be looking for off of that keyword? Then that's important to do in e-com. Does this mean internal linking, main menus?
I mean, all in all, it's really going to be a combination of these kinds of factors. But for us, it was a lot more of, let's say in that case, a lot of it was actually having proper, at the longer tail, the actual descriptive elements that were unique. This was before a lot of people were like, oh yeah, you really should have unique meta descriptions that doesn't match the manufacturing content.
And just for date range approximation, when about was that?
Oh boy, I have to go back. That's probably, let's see, it was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So post Panda, so that part at least was probably 2012, 13.
Okay. Yeah. So at that time, and so when Panda came out, did you then see a lot more people talking about, oh, you actually need unique product descriptions? Was Panda one of those things that you noticed that sort of moved that conversation along?
Oh, I think Panda was fundamentally a massive shift for the industry in a lot of ways. I think, for better or worse, for whatever your opinions on it, I think it actually really did help get people to start purely out of what can I do just for actual, like quote unquote, let's call it what was called pure SEO maybe back in the day. To thinking about SEO as a function of a lot of the product world and the actual user intent coming in, and how do I build something that actually works for both a human, as I like to call humans and humanoids.
Right.
And actually merging that into a real kind of art and science together.
Yeah, absolutely. What about in the B2B space? So as you move from B2C to B2B, that perhaps is a little bit of the actual SEO implications. What about things like, how should I say, internal communication, or like the more sort of consulting, people-oriented side of SEO? When I work with e-commerce clients, they're very revenue driven, and you can closely tie the revenue to the traffic. Even publishers, you can do that because they drive ads. But with B2B, I find there's a lot of grayness around how search is actually driving revenue for them.
Yeah, that's definitely been more, it's been interesting and more of a struggle. Not from necessarily a difficulty side of it, just that it's not actually set up in the first place.
Right.
So, and part of that is, it's hard to say exactly why the B2B companies have never had it set up, but I found that it's almost as if once Google Analytics ends, that's where it ends for all the search data. It never as often will translate and push down into, say, a Salesforce database.
Right.
And that's even, laying aside kind of the differences of how do you the attribution models that are different.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, oftentimes it's just not set up, and so they
can't attribute it.
Well, they can't attribute it because there's no tags, and so if it's no tags, it's thrown under organic, and now you're under control of organic. And you're like, but I don't deal with direct.
Right.
And if direct is a huge chunk of the traffic, it's then hard to attribute yours. And the question, of course, then becomes: do I spend, the next 3-6 months working through a large organization to get this fixed, just so I can properly attribute it, or do I at least work on the site now, improve everything, and at least showcase at the higher level, it's connecting here, and then we'll eventually get down once we put in the proof, the proof that the stuff I'm doing is working.
Yeah, let's dig into that a little. I do want to get to Zendesk in a moment, but that was very interesting what you just said, like this idea of, do I jump right to the implementation, execute, but then not be able to fully prove what I've just done? Or do I set up the provable data first, get a benchmark, and then execute? So how do you balance those two things? And because I work as a consultant, so I don't necessarily have 3 months or the luxury to take that time to set stuff up. I mean, what I might say to a possible client is, you should get that set up and come back to me in 2 months or 3 months when that's set up. So, but how do you handle those decisions?
I think part of that is an understanding of, will they accept at least a leading indicating metric? If they're able to accept that, and you're not going to necessarily get complete full buy-in as a result, but at least you can say, hey, we know in general this is the likely conversions from this point on. Then I can say, all right, I'm going to start here, because at least I can hit the ground running and make the changes I need to as soon as possible.
Yeah.
It's when that isn't the case, then I'm like, all right, I need to actually spend the time to dive all the way through.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And sometimes the leading indicator can be a hard sell, but it's the best way to. It's the only way to go when you have that data. About Zendesk, so tell the listeners when you were working with Zendesk and sort of what your role was there.
Yeah, so I was at Zendesk about 2 years ago now. So from about, I think, 15 to 2017, roughly.
Yeah.
And it was great. That was my personal first time in a major brand environment where there was an actual dedicated brand team versus kind of, sometimes you might say companies where you care about the brand but don't act on it.
Yeah.
This was something that really did. And it was very much a different environment for me, both in terms of making the switch to B2B, but making the switch to a branded company like that.
Yeah, and just for the 3 people that might not know, or maybe more, I don't know, what is Zendesk?
To be fair, I mean, they've been moving, let's say, up market, so I can't say that what they are is they are today, but at least when I was there, the easiest way I would describe it was customer service software.
Okay, yeah.
They are all about the relationships for customers and businesses.
Yeah. I did a site search on Zendesk, and I saw that's where a company will host their help documentation.
Yeah, so you're that's a whole other story. But yeah, the help desk, chat, or live chat, and kind of messenger bots, a lot of those kind of different product types.
Yeah, and one thing I did want to ask about was, how do you handle SEO for that sort of help center documentation, especially when it's not. So just so the listeners understand, this is like, I'm TikTok and I want to create documentation. I think that's literally the example that I saw in a site search. I want to use a platform to make help documentation because it's already built. I don't want to build my own platform. So you get a subdomain, tiktok.zendesk.com. It's not Zendesk content, but you're basically hosting it and providing the infrastructure. Yeah. So how do you deal with a site that has all kinds of content like that?
Yeah, well, fortunately, because it's on, generally, because they are separate subdomains, Google has most of the time, a sufficient understanding that there is a differentiation between all of those subdomains.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen. I've actually had I would get sometimes tickets that would come in complaining where Google would actually not understand, and it would be the help center, name of whatever brand it was, and then dash Zendesk.
Huh.
And it was part of it was because of
so the title tag showing up that way.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
And we're looking at it going, that's not right.
No kidding.
And it wasn't something we could technically. There was nothing that we could functionally fix because it was really on their end to make sure they filled in the content, made sure they actually opened it up in a way so that Google can actually sometimes understand. But those were more kind of the edge cases. And in a lot of ways, for me, it was going and finding the people in the department who owned the product, who worked within it, worked with them, talk with them, understand what their goals were to help functionally both build a better product, think about how can we help our customers so that their help centers actually will rank for whatever the terminologies they wanted. And same thing. Look at what the competitors are doing for their help center systems and see if we can make sure we do a better job.
So did you do anything special technically, like crawling settings or indexing to handle that content?
I'm trying to think. For those, I would work with our team to build in some base templates that, as looking at it and saying, okay, for those who want to start this up, let's make sure we have our help center documentation started in those templates. Both from, obviously there's the value side of it from our Zendesk end, but also the help centers having all that documentation for users who are starting up, so it's actually useful to them so they can read through. And then asking in turn, these pages that were built out had information about our help center, and so maybe a ticket doc person who comes in is like, oh, well, this is cool. Who's this hosted by? And that we'd actually have kind of let's call it an ad unit on the side that would help provide push information in both to the page itself, but also kind of some of our own help center docs. That could kind of provide a nice little feedback loop fundamentally to continue to grow the business that way.
Yeah, because I looked at the site search and they were currently, I don't know if this was true at the time, 3 million plus URLs indexed on the Zendesk root domain. So did you or anybody internally look at things like log files or optimize for crawl budget and so forth?
So looked at some of that, but it wasn't my time, like prioritization for something like that, because a lot of those, not to say that it didn't matter, but just for the purpose of the brand, again, this is kind of the difference I often find in the B2B world is, yes, there are millions of pages out on all these customer subdomains, but there are very, very few on the actual main marketing site.
I see.
And so I can make all the time and effort and spend in this area, great, for what pages?
Right.
That sure, maybe we'll get we'll get a lift if we make changes over there, but the time and effort to spend in that wasn't worth it for the time that at least I had started and I was there for, to focus in that area.
And that speaks to a big difference between B2C e-commerce and then this B2B with the core marketing site. E-com, it'd be wildly crazy to think about not optimizing for, and that's a huge difference.
Oh yeah, like I can remember times in the e-com world where I literally was having to figure out, as the season is ramping up, our site was starting to, and this was with the artificial Christmas tree company, Balsam Hill. We were running into issues where it was potentially going to look like it was going to take down the site, and we were looking into it, trying to figure out why.
You mean because of bandwidth, server bandwidth?
Server bandwidth, and it turned out that there were two, let's call quote unquote bad bots. They're not, but kind of. And it was Baidu and Yandex.
Really?
Were hitting the site extremely hard, and we're looking at it going, do we really need these bots hitting our site?
Yeah, wow.
And we basically took them out. Well, okay, I think we kept Yandex because we had some conversions at the time from Russia, but China, there was just nothing.
Yeah.
And we were said, okay, we just have to kill this. And it was taking up so much of the crawl of the site, far more than even what Googlebot was doing. And this is ridiculous. We don't show up in this country.
Yeah.
There's no reason for us to be.
And did you identify that looking at logs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, at least it was a relatively similar thing. It was more of the hit counter that we could essentially use. We didn't have the full access because we were on a closed system.
Yeah. Do you ever do this? One thing I do is look at log files and I look at spoofed Google bots and block those IPs sometimes if they're very aggressive. I don't know if that's a thing or if that's even matters, but it's something I do once in a while.
I've only mostly done it when it comes to cleaning up my analytics data, where they're not from a pure crawl thing, but if you're starting to affect my direct traffic numbers, I'm going to go and this was before Google Analytics, example, actually had a button you could click to kind of reduce it.
Yeah.
I spent too many hours every week when I get this little, CEO will come in and be like, why did we just have this massive direct traffic spike? And I have to go in, all right, pull up host name and server and look at the thing and find out which one it was, and it's a new one, and it's like,
Do you think that button works? It seems to work, I think.
Yeah, it seemed to have done quite a bit better. There's always a few that are out there.
Yeah.
And especially sometimes if it's not catching the ones you accidentally put into place, like a pingdom or alert site back then, and you just make sure you qualify those well.
So one thing that I saw that you did both at Zendesk and I believe in your current role, or at least at a prior role, was building best practices documentation internally. So I want to ask about you doing that at Zendesk, and then we'll transition to your current role and talk about that. So how do you go about building, let's just start there. Like, what were the things that you did to build internal SEO documentation?
Yeah, so Zendesk, to give an idea, when I first started, it was about 1,000 people to about 2,000. I was the first SEO, so there was literally no documentation whatsoever.
Yeah.
Which is plus and minus. It means there's no SEO as much of that I have to unlearn and have been retrain people.
Right.
So I was able to essentially go in and fundamentally say, here is a deck that I would talk about and say, here's what SEO is about. Here's my philosophy about SEO.
Yeah.
And every time a new employee came on that was relevant, like a new product marketing manager, I would reach out to them and sit down and go through, training for them in person and essentially kind of specific documents that I think would be useful for them to learn about and talk to them and explain how we together can help improve whatever business line they were going to be working on.
Yeah. And were these documents like Google Docs or anything?
They were either Google Docs, depending on like which team. If it's like a content team, then I literally had a best practice saying, here is the step-by-step process of how you want to write, let's say, a long form article, however you want to write it, but here's things to keep in mind to make your life easier and better that works for SEO, whereas like maybe the product marketing team was mostly in slides.
Yeah, and so one challenge I know with documentation is like, especially with SEO, is lack of context. So, but you sort of solve for that by actually meeting with people one-to-one.
You have to.
Yeah.
I know there's a philosophy of those that it's like, remote work is great.
Yeah.
And I understand that can work for some people really well, but for at least for me, I need to actually like meet them in person, to sit down, talk to them, interact, become friends in some cases, if sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
And I feel that makes a huge difference for getting SEO work done when you can talk to the person and say why you're doing that. And part of it's a little bit sometimes harder for people to reject you as such.
Yes.
That doesn't mean there's not people who will then go around and not do it, but the camaraderie that comes out of it is that much better in my opinion.
Like I ran into somebody that works for a client that I'm working with. I ran into him at a cafe yesterday, and we had probably the best 5-minute conversation about what we're up to with SEO with that client than we did in a formal meeting in their conference room. Just like more sort of organic things, and you're out of your element, and he's more kind of attentive to what we're talking about. So
one of the things you reminded me of, and I forgot about this, which was the most fun I ever had, was a large gathering talking about kind of some of the new developments that Google had come out with, and we were talking about voice search.
Yeah.
So in the meeting, part of my role and talk about it and how this was doing well for us. And I'm like, look, here's something that we did. And all I did was I pulled out my phone, put it on the table, and asked Google, what is help desk?
Yeah.
Google responds. At that time, it's not there anymore, but at the time, it was our featured snippet, and it would then give the spiel and then attribution by Zendesk, and like just sit there in the meeting just doing that, and it was just Perfect.
I bet they love that.
Yeah, yeah. And so and that's great as well for the content folks to see kind of those things of what can we do to target this, because we've got it for some big terms like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I find executives love that sort of thing, especially when it represents their brand and they can kind of tangibly see the result. That's a really cool story. One last thing about documentation. How do you deal with updates? Because things change in SEO. Do you just sort of update as new things come about, or every 6 months, or what's your process with that?
Yeah, so for the most part I find that with some exceptions, most of the updates aren't massively going to affect the type of documentations I put together. There are exceptions, obviously, where, okay, I got to go back in and change something. I'm trying to think the latest thing I had to do recently in that way, but
because there's updates in search, but the pillars of creating really good content.
Yeah.
One thing I updated in some of my documentation lately is I've been using a new tool, the TF-IDF tool, which is not a ranking factor, everybody. But it's a great tool to make your content better. It's a new tool I've been using, so I'll add a new tool into my documents.
Yeah, I think the recent one I had was also asked.
Also, oh yeah. So tell us about that tool, because I have not had a chance to use that tool.
Well, I haven't had a large chance to dive in, but essentially it's looking at kind of people have also asked, and it pulls in kind of the past that as it keeps expanding, it pulls in all that extra information.
Yeah.
So for me in a long form content doc, I used to say it used to just be
Answer the public?
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you. You knew which one I was going.
I know what you're
Answer the public as one of the ones that, hey, take a look at this, see if there are other questions you should answer and really fulfill as part of this document.
Right.
So it's adding that one into it and making sure that going forward that's there.
Yeah.
Depending on how big, of course, that changes, I might directly tell them that it's been updated. Otherwise, I'll just leave it in going forward.
Yeah. And the people also ask, that's different than Answer the Public or keywordtool.io, because those are based upon the autosuggest API, right? But the people also ask, is that sort of the first tool that's pulling the people also ask questions and answers? That's the first one that I was aware of.
I think it's the first one that's dove really deep into continually pulled in a format that's usable. I think there are other tools that have tried to list that out, but not in a way that is simplistically showcased.
Yeah, cool. We'll put the link in the show notes, and I definitely want to check that out. So let's chat about your current role. It's at Turn River. So tell people what Turn River is, and then what your role is at that company.
Yeah, so Turn River Capital is a growth equity firm based in San Francisco. We are essentially a company that we seek and buy companies that are generally growing at a certain rate they're usually around a $10 to $50 million business. They've been growing maybe not as fast as they once would have liked, but they don't have the operational efficiency that maybe better not better, but other companies do. I mean, every company has its ups and downs. And so we look for companies that don't have the operational expertise. We go in, we buy it, and then bring in people like myself, SEO, paid, other marketing functions, CRO, sales experts, as well as CS experts, and grow the business. So very much different than a lot of, say, the private equity space in the pure way, which is they often will buy and then kind of cut costs and improve it EBITDA purely and sell it off.
Right.
Whereas we're there to actually turn the business into a new, expert powerhouse and grow it before we then sell that.
Do you use SEO skills to help find and vet these companies?
Yes, and not just really, to be fair, it's not just me, but actually the agency team, which is kind of the marketing side with the sales and CS, we all have kind of roles of which we say, here are X, Y, and Z things we look for in order to determine if that company is deficient in this area, and as such, we think we can grow at X percent if we were to buy this business.
For SEO, do you look at things like their link profile or their past search traffic history and possible past penalties? Do you get that deep into it?
I will. Well, for sure, if there's a past penalty history, yes.
Yeah.
Just you want to make
You
sure
want to be
that,
careful.
Yeah, you want to be careful about stuff. And there's been times where I've I think the one that we recently got is actually one of my most fun, because I had to go all the way back to 1996. Is how long that company's been around. Now, Web Archive, I think, only goes back to 94.
Wow.
So that company had been online for a long, long time.
Wow.
And, get to see kind of the history of what that looks like. And yes, so I'm pulling in, looking at their link profile data, looking in at what they're ranking for, looking at the architecture of the site, what are the kind of top terms and pages that do well for them, in order to kind of make a guesstimate of what I think is likely to be the net outcome when I work with them.
One thing I've been thinking about a lot lately and haven't really spoken about is that now, as I've been doing SEO for a long time, like 10 years or so, I feel like winning in SEO, you see those charts people post on Twitter, et cetera, with like traffic growth. I sort of feel like now 80 to 90% of that success is choosing who I'm going to work with to begin with, and then the actual SEO is almost a piece of cake after that choice is made. And so what are some things, and I think of a parallel to that, and then maybe choosing what companies to work with. You might look for a signal that a company could be successful with SEO in the future. What are some things that you look for that you see that a company could possibly be successful with search, or maybe red flags that make you very cautious or skeptical?
Yeah, probably one of the simplest ones is just, do they actually go deep into their descriptive elements of what their product is? If they're not doing that, and if there's volume, that's an area where there's opportunity.
Search volume on the generic keywords or their brand keywords?
Generic, yeah, sorry. Yeah, and brand keywords, helpful.
Yeah.
But, and again, I've run into this just recently, so this is an exception, but normally if they're not ranking for their brand, that's a whole other issue for that company. Yeah. But usually it's just generic keywords, or I call it, let's say, product-based keywords. And if they don't really do a good job of defining who they are, then that's an opportunity to say, all right, they're just leaving money on the table. When it comes to kind of the flip side of what are some real negatives, the negatives can just be like the market is not there. So it doesn't mean we won't buy them, because maybe my side won't work on it, and there's other operational efficiencies we can work on. But I might then just in turn say, okay, SEO is not going to be a priority focus, if and or that. I think other kind of negatives might be, as we learn more about the business, if we think it's going to be, say, too much of a hassle. So come in and say, all right, here's what we think this is, but then as we're working with them, we find that they are not compromised, like they're not willing. There's a lot of pushback, or very strong, extremely strong personalities that we just are not going to click well together on.
Right, the people's a big thing, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why, for example, a lot of us at our company, to grow a company is different from a private equity side, where you completely say fire everybody and get rid of and work for you. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Our side, we actually have to work with them, so we're not there to say you must do this. It's like, we recommend this, here's why, here's what we've done, we'll test this. And so we actually really need to work with these folks. And so that's another thing we'll look for. If it's too much, that's potentially negative for us to actually do things with.
So I'd love an example of the types of these companies. I sort of have a general idea, and then I'd love to talk about how you approach growth with them strategically now, but a few examples first would be great. Not if you can't name them, that's fine.
I mean, they're on our site, so that's perfectly fine. So for example, the one I was talking about that's like back in all the way in 96, so that's the official name is Advanced System Concepts, Inc. Now, they're much more well known for Active Batch.
Active Batch, I don't know what that is.
It's batch scheduling software, enterprise job scheduling.
Okay.
Very much it's workload automation software. So think of Zapier is a way to help connect between individual workflows.
Sure.
Active Batch and ASCI sits on top of that.
I see, okay.
And so all the way across the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the one where we came in and we looked at it, and great team, kind of working with them. They do have kind of the marketing things, but they haven't originally had a lot of the operational efficiencies that now we can come in and we're working with them to really build that up. So that's one of our newest ones.
Yeah.
One of our success stories that we sold earlier this year was Mailgun. Mailgun.
Mailgun, okay.
So this is the one that essentially it's a competitor to, say, SendGrid. So it was more email marketing, but more for developers.
Okay.
It's kind of the focus.
Yep.
And that one was essentially, as an example, was phenomenal domain. No pages to describe that they even did things like bulk email management.
Right.
So it was like building out 50 pages just to make sure we described every single opportunity of what they were doing that had volume, that was different when you look at the actual search result to make sure we're not creating like junk content and things that didn't matter, but building all that out and just took off.
Yeah, so I want to dig into that a little bit. That's something I do quite often with you mentioned that earlier, like just B2B clients not having the content to talk about their different product attributes. How do you go about finding those? So I'm working with a B2B client now that does live video streaming software and things like that. And there are so many keywords out there, and finding them is a challenge, number one. But then two, where do you draw the line? How do you determine what should have a page and not have a page? So I'd love to talk through that sort of research process and those challenges.
Yeah, well, we do have a team, an actual investment and sourcing team to go and reach out and find these types of companies and continually, see where they are in their cycle, see what's going on, how are they doing. On my end, for me, it's competitive tools. So like an SEMrush is a great example of which I will compare and contrast, or they have their at least an initial starting set of competitors. I'll collect and ask, if we're more directly working with them, then I'll ask them who their direct competitors are, indirect. Ones I like to call ankle biters, really small ones that they look at it and like, yeah, that's nice. I'm like, no, I want to know who they are.
Yeah.
And collect what they are ranking on. And collect a lot of that data. And yes, it's a lot of data.
Yeah. How do you manage the data? Do you have a more than Google Docs or something, or where are you?
Well, okay, so the nice part is it's B2B. So unlike e-com, the volume is not actually usually as high.
Right.
So it's not to say that it's not, I don't need other stuff for it, but it's more manageable for me to kind of directly dive into the data and get very tactically minded.
Sure.
Versus staying at a high level.
Yeah.
That's not to say I wouldn't take some of the stuff that David's built and send it over to my data scientist and be like, build this, but then do these things that I want on top of that.
Right.
So, for those that didn't happen to, but he basically showcased how he built. I'm going to badly do this, but it was like out of some kind of like scripting app script, and just kind of automated how to define keywords.
Right.
So
and that you're referring to a session from yesterday, right, at Tech SEO Boost. So by the way, for everyone listening, I'll put a link to the recorded live stream. You can go watch that session afterwards. I heard it was great. I didn't catch it. Okay, so you have all this data. Competitor data is a great place to get that. How do you then start to make sense of it and then arrive at what should end up being a page?
It honestly is a lot of the grunt work. Well, there are ways I'm already trying to build out with my data scientist to lessen it, but the grunt work is looking at the results. It really is just fundamentally saying, does this result actually either A, make sense, showcase and rank?
Yeah.
Do we have the potential by looking at, is this more informational, percentage levels, or from 100% info down to 0 to, is this product based? Are there more comparison sites, and so we can't potentially rank, or is there something else? And looking at them and then bucketing those keywords in ways that kind of make sense then to say, all right, we're going to target this set because let's say it's information in nature. We cover this topic in the blog, and now let's, here's this. Priority of these schedules could be volume. It can be directly more on topic, more oriented towards what we sell. That forth.
So what you're talking about there is something that I run into all the time. I was talking to a new potential client, and they said, we want to rank for music production school. And I said, do you really? And we went to Google, and the first 5 results are all articles. And then I'm getting a map because I'm being localized. They don't do local, except for 1 or 2 locations. So is that what you're talking about there, is like matching the keyword to the actual intent.
That and more, yes.
What is the more?
So the more is it's not just that individual keyword, but then looking across a set that because people search in so many different ways, and Google's gotten good enough now, almost most of the time, to say, all right, the way you spell something, maybe it's a slight variation or a different.
I've seen a plural singular have a different search result.
That's a little, okay, so that part in the e-com site can be a little different because that intent is interestingly different.
Right.
Part of how people, this was something where like if you look for like a red Christmas tree, people don't think there are multiple versions, so it's different than if you look for like white Christmas trees.
Right.
People are like, yeah, there's many, I can buy many.
Right.
They don't see it for a red. So that part, yes, but in like B2B, you're looking at the word software or solution or service.
Right.
And those types of terms, most of the time, not always, but mostly are sometimes the same.
Yes.
And so I will bucket that together and say, you know what, we're not trying to build a page for each and every one anymore. So it's taking that group and saying we need to build a page, and then there's a main focus or two, but this is the bucket to give the kind of the realm of what we're going after.
Yeah, and also I have a little short list of keywords like that whenever I work with B2B or software. I just throw them onto every topic keyword, and I say, usually these are your transaction intent searches. Like, because somebody will want to rank for video streaming, and it's, you look at it, it's informational, but when the user adds software or service or solution, now it turns into transaction intent.
So this is my, let's say, disagreement.
Yeah, I love it, yep.
I've been finding more and more, and this may just be due to the recent changes. I've actually run into queries now where just if you don't look at the results, I've had some where if you put in the word software, there's not a single product page ranking.
Right.
It's comparison shopping.
Yeah.
And a variety of blog articles. And I'm looking at going, whoa.
Yeah.
Like, now that's outside the ads, and I'm like, okay, so you still have it in the ads, but I'm looking at the actual organic, and I'm going, okay, we're not targeting that.
Yeah, and this is why you have to look at the actual search result.
Yeah.
And I see that too. So I know I'm generalizing as well, but yeah, that's why you have to look. So I'm curious, in the work that you're doing now, or maybe even before, but presently, do you focus on link building or external link acquisition?
Honestly, it was not something I needed to do, for example, at Zendesk. It was massive brand. They had already built a lot of the stuff. For me, that was more making sure we didn't lose a lot of our links.
Right. So did you actually run reports like looking at lost links and then going out and reclaiming those? Or?
Not in that way. I mean, those are things I do currently today at Turn River. Like, okay, let's recover things that we should have gotten links for.
I see. Yep.
Branded mentions or stuff.
Yep.
At Zendesk, I meant more of like, oh, we don't care about this topic anymore, so we're going to isolate and eventually maybe remove the page. And I'm like, oh, hold on.
It has links on it.
It has a massive amount. This is like one of our top link page, and you want to kill it.
Right.
Which is a lot of times, sometimes why like either rebrands or redesigns suffer so heavily is they remove or isolate out a page that used to generate so much links.
Yeah.
Or has that links. And then now you're basically saying it no longer matters, the business no longer is related to that. So now you're going to lose out on those areas.
Is there a particular link acquisition, if any, that method or strategy that you focus on? I find with B2B, the link reclamation or branded mentions is lesser of an opportunity when they're especially a lesser known company. Mm-hmm. I myself don't do a lot of link building, but I'm curious if there's anything that sort of proactively is done.
Yeah, so again, part of my role usually to come in is to use a catchphrase, it's the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
That means on-site work for often B2B companies that are not well-versed, which means I need to fix stuff on-site before I go down the other path of building out kind of a link building program. So I haven't personally yet really done a really big dive into building a lot of that out, but in areas where the opportunity is available, then it becomes either going with whatever data and surveys that we can put together that can go to whatever industry folks there are, whatever potentially interesting social outlets that can kind of funnel it out, and where appropriate, what partners we can work with that play both not just a kind of a link side of it, but also a conversion rate optimization side.
Right.
So basically, what you would call maybe in the e-com world as brand ambassadors. That's a very similar theme.
I see. Cool. So I'd love to chat a little bit about some ranking factors and the algorithm. I'm just going to throw out a few concepts and get your take on them, some of which are intentionally maybe debatable or have some discussion around them. So first being EAT, expertise, authority, trust, from the Quality Raters Guidelines. What is your take on the enormous amount of chatter about EAT in the last couple of years? I have my own thoughts on this, but I would love to hear yours first.
Yeah, I had one site get impacted during the times those quality updates essentially were going on.
Yeah.
And it's, got hit, got it out, and then it's been kind of a little bit up and down here or there. My general take is anything in the quality guidelines they're looking is kind of, it's separated from the algo itself. They're doing the offline calculations to try to find metrics that approximate what they see from people who are manually helping to review it.
Yes.
And it's not that it's not to say that there aren't aspects that might play as factors, but I think the areas in which they're trying to find those combinations is what becomes the factors later on. And they may not have, and so they may not have all the user type of metrics maybe they want, or it's very easy to game.
Yeah.
So they're going to try to find something else that kind of closely approximates like a leading indicator.
Right. So one thing concrete is like having a B2B listing. Oh, no, not B2B. What am I saying? A Better Business Bureau, BBB.
Oh, BBB.
We're talking about B2B so much. I think that's in Quality Raters Guidelines. They tell them to look for things like that, look for good ratings, but that's not actually a ranking factor.
Right, and I think this will as well go a little bit of my presentation today, but the concept that it's not that it may itself not be a factor, but it may be in combination with, say, 5 other things that if all those 5 are present, lift.
Right.
If it's just itself, nothing happens.
Because one big problem they have in an algorithm is noise when they're dealing with signals. People from Google will say it all the time. So that seems like just that one thing alone, that's a really good point, that it would need to add up with other factors.
And it goes well with kind of their answers. Like, yeah, no, that's not a factor.
Right.
Well, okay, yes,
not alone.
Not alone.
Yeah.
And maybe it's not even with anything. It's possible it may not be with it. They may just look for a theme similar to that.
Right.
But that's where we as SEOs need to do better in the data-minded sense of how the statistical analyses, the different kinds work, so that we can ask better questions and understand better and how search engines work in turn.
Yeah, so core updates. My opinion on these has always been that they're not about EAT and things like that. My opinion, and AJ Cohn, I know you know AJ, he wrote a great article last year, Algorithms in the Age of Document Embeddings, I believe is the title. It's a really great article. It was sort of like pre-BERT, but he was talking about all that BERT stuff, and then that made me go do all this research on natural language processing, which was very helpful to my SEO work in the last year. But my thought on the core updates was always that the biggest paradigm problem with how people were looking at these is they're looking at a domain, and did this domain go up or down? Oh, the domain went down in a visibility chart. Well, that site was punished, or they lost, or this site won because the whole domain. But my thing was always segmentation, because in any core update that I've analyzed, you see certain pages go up and certain pages go down. So my opinion was EAT is sort of looked at as this like site-wide. People are trying to apply an old Panda or Penguin paradigm to a new core update. And these are not site-wide updates, in my opinion. It's more query-based quality updates. So what is your take? Do you agree with that, or do you have a slightly different take on it?
No, I mean, I'm pretty much in agreement. I think that Google's gotten better about, rather than just doing a pure domain hits or benefits,
right,
and has started, at least with some of these, they're page-to-page level, or in the case of BERT, more of the actual query concept.
Yes.
And so some of the things I noticed, let's say, I call it more quality update than I want to say as EAT. But for me, quality or core, like what I'm seeing is kind of different types of sites are coming in and out. And so what was fascinating for me sometimes is to see sites that were directly product oriented dropping down, and the more informational comparison sites shooting up in turn. And so then I have to go back in and say, oh, this query is no longer a product topic anymore.
That's the key. It's an intent shift.
Yeah, and that becomes a fundamentally different question than of either I go back and say, I'm sorry, I can't optimize as a product page for this thing anymore. So we either need to build as a content page, or maybe the whole theme for this set no longer applies to us, and we just drop on this and we have to find a new area to make up.
That sort of push and pull between product and information intent is very fascinating. The whole thing with examine.com, I don't know if you caught that. Saul was tweeting about that and writing about that for a while. They were quote unquote hit with the core updates. I actually worked directly with them for a little while prior to all of that. They didn't implement much what I told them to, but I think their issue was 90% of their site is built on these one-word supplement or nutrition keywords, which has a very vague intent. So if you're trying to rank for creatine, well, that one-word search, am I searching for information or a product or a scientific paper? And so that's the trouble I think they run into.
Yeah, and for me, what I was able to kind of dive in and see some of these things, because what was fascinating to see was I had one site that took, in the same exact industry, we had one that took a nasty hit and the other was moving up a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it ranking wise as well to try to figure out what was going on. And it was the fact that because we had one site that used to just be, above the fold for almost everything, it actually had just moved down, and the other was still moving up because it was still kind of moving into the below the fold, which was the new area for where, say, some of the product pages could show up.
Right.
Whereas more of that information chunk would be now above.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of balancing the two out in that way. And so like net-wise, I think we were still doing better, but just because of the type of users that were then coming in, we're still converting based off of, these were the people who were really looking for that, and so it was more likely to have, let's say, better qualified leads as a result.
Another possible or debatable ranking factor is click-through rate. What is your take on click-through rate? Is it a ranking factor?
All right, so we know that at least in the past they've talked about it from page 1 to page 2. This is something often I don't hear as much about anymore.
Yeah, and explain that a little bit.
There was, I forget who said, this was an artist saying they do determine who goes from page 1 to page 2.
As a search user.
As a search user, and if people are more, if they're having to go to page 2, then that also suggests actually this is not a good result. So there is that function they directly have mentioned. Now, by the position themselves, I think that has been misconstrued in that it's probably something they'll look offline, maybe run it within their set, and then try to figure out, again, how do you estimate that out? Or do you take it over a long time series to say, all right, it's not during this time period, but do they hold above the average for what we expect for this position over a 5-month basis, and then maybe we move you up?
I remember years ago John Mueller saying they use user metrics but in large aggregate data sets, because if the data set's too small, it's too noisy, is what he was saying. What do you think about, AJ's also written about the idea of short clicks and long clicks, coming back to the SERP and clicking on pogo sticking. What do you think about, are those just SEOs, not just AJ, but I know Rand has talked about pogo sticking, a lot of people is this just us as SEOs trying to come up with some term or metric that, we can just manipulate something else, right? I mean, that's what historically SEOs have tried to do.
I think it's what the best terminology I think it's that we try to come up with a terminology of what we're trying to describe.
Yeah.
And we don't know enough, and so we're putting something out there for now. It may not be right. It may not be the right way to explain it, but because we either don't have the right data or we don't do it, we're looking at things that talking a lot more about user intent.
Yeah.
So we're trying to explain that in turn and saying, what is the user intent? Well, one possibility is this.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something that, again, they might look at in aggregate and over a long time period. I know that for myself, that was something I kind of felt it felt like something like that. And so I think some of the feelings that we get, we try to express it in that way.
Yeah.
Because we don't necessarily have that data.
Yeah.
And I think that's the hardest part. And so we try to make an approximation of what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And sometimes that approximation might actually work, happenstance.
Yeah.
But again, I'm kind of iffy nowadays about something just like that.
Yeah, your pinned tweet is very interesting. It says, okay, I'm putting my foot down and making 2019 as the year I put together a presentation on how one would actually do an analysis, how to run a regression and predictive model, how to qualify what you do, and the step-by-step ways to do with that actual data. Can you give some context to that tweet? I don't know if you made a presentation or maybe that's what you're talking about, I'm not sure. But give us the context, and then at least I'd love to hear what this sort of predictive model is.
Yeah, so the context of this was that over the past, let's say, 2-3 years now, there's been relatively more and more kind of people putting some studies out there that are based on very simplistic correlations.
Right, ranking factor studies
that have been pushing ideas based off of very, very simple ways of running a correlation.
Like content length?
There are like many, yes.
You need 1,480 words to rank.
Yeah, and ways of how they display their results, the way they talk about the results, even with qualifications. And so I had gotten to the point where I got so fed up because my background is not like a true economist or anything like that. Like I studied econometrics as part of my international economics, as a part of international affairs as my undergrad and grad degree.
Yeah.
So I have a statistical background, and so looking at this just continually makes me feel, as an industry, we are woefully behind. We're letting others go in and even go to Congress and try to make talks about what's going on Google, because we as an industry aren't doing a good job to actually statistically put stuff together for everybody outside, both in and outside our industry.
Yeah.
And so that really got me so fed up, I need to do this and put something together to really start to kick the industry in the rear end to move us along in a better way.
Right.
And there's some areas of which, for example, here at Tech SEO Boost, where there's a research competition. There's a lot of good folks that are more technical minded, that have at least inklings of kind of some of the data science with it. And the fact that they had a data scientist on the IR side in the presentation yesterday too was phenomenal to see what true scientific fields do.
Yeah. So
that was kind of the impetus. And so my presentation, the original goal was to go full on, here's how to build this massive structure, or at least starting point, with real data, with everything. And as I'll talk about actually in my presentation as well, is there was one part I needed that because of that I couldn't do. So what I've done instead is to turn it into here's how we as an industry need to be better about being data minded, and knowing what that looks like for data science and statistics, because it's a very technical field, and most of us in SEOs, even those that are technical SEOs, don't understand the technical nature of data and statistics.
Right.
And I think that area has been very lacking. And so that's my presentation, to go into that area to really help us move the bar along, and hope to really help move the industry into a better situation.
And so I'll urge people to go check out the presentation, which should be online at the time that this episode comes out, or shortly thereafter, to check that out. And I think that segues nicely into one of the last couple things I want to chat about, which is that Wall Street Journal article, which you can't see Micah, but he's sighing and rolling his eyes to that article, as did many SEOs. I mean, we could spend hours picking apart all the issues with this article, but I think, speaking of actually properly analyzing something, I'd love to hear, like, I don't know if you read their little supplementary piece where they talked about their process behind how they did their analysis, but if you're familiar with that, what were the glaring issues with how they came to their conclusions?
Well, 17 keywords. I mean, just ask yourself, any of us in this industry, even our simplistic correlation studies do more than 17 keywords.
Yeah.
And I'm most of the time nitpicking those.
Yeah.
17 keywords?
So you're saying they only use 17 actual queries to run their analysis?
Yeah. Now, they ran it multiple times. Okay, that's nice. At least that was something. But
for that, they get a cookie.
Yeah, half a cookie. You can't make a judgment call based off of so few keywords.
Yeah.
To say, here's what this is, and I understand the impetus of they want to showcase the big ones and the ones that people are more likely to see and a volume behind it. Sure, there's more than 17 of those.
Yeah.
And the issue I've had with that, as well as many others where they tried to present to to Congress, is trying to not think about the type of bias and the bad data behind it, because it's not just running the 17, but then trying to compare it against the other search engines. How many people do you know run Bing?
Yeah.
How many people do you know that uses DuckDuckGo?
Right.
What is the type of person that uses those types of search engines?
Yeah.
Is going to create a different set of results, not just in the search suggests, but the potential results themselves. And so you don't actually have a true nice comparative study that you would otherwise, because the users are different.
Right.
That's one of the things I always had an issue with when Google would, and this is before they started to actually kind of say they do, but like, does Google take stuff from Chrome? And originally was like, dude, Chrome is not that large of the market. This years ago.
Right.
This would be a bad idea because you get a bias sample.
Right.
Now that most of the market is, say on Chrome, you can kind of do more of that and get a sufficiently, probably okay amount of data that way. But that aspect is what really, it's what frustrates me for us as an industry, because there's this view that we shouldn't, because we've done it poorly with ranking factor studies, we shouldn't do it at all.
Right.
And that's the wrong way of putting our head into the sand and stay ignorant, rather than making ourselves do better, try to solve these things, and how do I put it? Try to actually solve the fundamental natures of what we work on.
Yeah.
And be excited by some of the stuff, because if we can try to dive in, that to me is what we should be doing, and how to do that better, not just thinking of it as, oh, we're just trying to chase the algo.
Right.
It really is to improve how we do things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's the nuance. Like, you can undertake the same task with the same goal, or a different goal. So understand the algorithm. Okay, there's a couple reasons why you'd want to understand the algorithm. The bad, pessimistic reason is you want to game the system and do things in a bad way. But there's an actually positive way to go about doing that with good intentions, which is what you're describing.
Yeah, and it's just not, and it's the intentions also, but also for the concept of, it helps get people a better understanding of what they need to be doing.
Right.
So I also get frustrated on the flip side, not just to us as SEOs, but also to Google, when they go out there and say, just write for the users.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Because that's not what our users our bloggers are doing already?
Yeah.
Oh, then how?
Yeah.
How should they?
Yeah.
Oh, no, just write for the users. This is why, and I'm happy that they're actually getting to be, this goes to that, to say, they're starting to reach out more now and talk more, which, great, love that they're doing that.
Yeah.
But the kind of, the pushback of just write for the users isn't helpful, because yes, I know what they're trying to get across, but for those of us in the industry, it's like, they already are trying, and they're failing.
Yeah.
because of both ourselves as SEOs, because we're not doing a sufficient job in the data side, but also because Google's not being helpful enough and hiding, I would say kind of hiding behind the wall of just write for the users and it'll be okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, because the way that they're writing and the way that you want them to write is not connecting.
Right. Speaking of Google and them communicating a little bit better, that's a great segue you provided me, because I want to ask a little bit about the Google Webmaster Product Summit that just happened. I saw you attended that. What was that like?
That was great. I was really thrilled to see them doing something like this. I've never seen them do before.
Yeah.
Well, in the US, they've been starting to do this abroad in a lot of different cities, but even when we at the time had Matt Cutson talking about things that were rolling out, or when they were talking about this was a major update at this month, to be able to hear from them directly, to talk to their product managers who work on the individual components directly and give feedback and insight from our end to them is just huge. We don't get that obviously as a free user or free side versus the paid team that
AdWords and stuff.
Yeah, that's actually paying, and they'll have actual account managers and reps. But the fact that I can go to them and explain that, yes, I understand some of the areas of which they're building something for all users, but they're missing out on the enterprise users, or they're missing out on your power users. And so there are reasons things don't work for us or fail for us because you've built this so generically that all of us power users are like, this is junk.
Yeah. Or like when I get frustrated that the date UI functionality in Search Console is terrible, I just tweeted at John Mueller, poor John, who sometimes listens to the show. Hi, John. I don't know who's behind that. Like, I just kind of share it with Gary or John or somebody, but you don't know who the actual person is that could make an improvement to that.
Yeah.
So it must be nice to actually meet some of them.
It was great to at least talk to them, provide some thoughts and everything with it, which is, it also gives us insight to understand that the algorithm is actually really broken apart in many different areas. And so when we hear about an update there, an update over here, it may be completely different teams making those changes because one works on this, on the, say, featured snippets, and another's working on how the layout looks. Like, those types of differentiations actually can be very insightful for us in turn.
Because we all think of Google as just Google. And, Google made an update, as if it's all one thing. Right. But I remember one time they shared an internal meeting, a video of an internal meeting where there was 30 people making a decision on auto suggest or something.
I remember that,
Yeah, and I wish they'd do more of that actually. So if you're listening, wink, wink, you can do that. So last thing, speaking of events, so you started Bay Area Search. Is that correct? What is the actual URL again?
BayAreaSearch.org.
And so I'd love to know just a little bit about that, but what I'd really in particular love to know, because I think some of the audience might be interested in this, what makes a good possible speaker for you? Like when you're thinking about who to have present at these events?
Yeah, so BayAreaSearch.org is basically a nonprofit association for SEO meetups in San Francisco. Background on this is essentially that there was kind of a group many years ago, but it was more an elite kind of private club where if you got in, none of your competitors could get in.
Right.
And then just, it was the hub of SEO with Google there and Yahoo there, and so there was not really felt at the time probably a need for that when they had Google Dance and events that were pretty relatively common enough. But over the years, it kind of, again, part of my frustration to do something was to with others like Matt Storms and Chris Chu, who started this approach of let's host it at our companies. And I worked with them together and say, all right, let's actually build this into a real meetup, because every other major city in the US has this, and yet here in the hub of San Francisco, Bay Area, we don't have this.
Right.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
We need to fix this.
Yeah.
And so that was the impetus to build this out, to actually host it and make it a little more unique for us, which because of what Matt and Chris had kind of started, was we go about and host it at different companies in San Francisco.
I see.
And what we usually look for the type of speakers is kind of because we are often there are a lot of either B2B companies or like larger enterprise ones, we do try to see what's going to be valuable for more higher level or more semi-advanced to advanced SEOs.
Yeah.
Then maybe kind of other meetups that are just kind of one-to-one type things. We'll try to pull in good stuff because we've got myself, Andrew Shotland at Local SEO Guide, and
Sure.
AJ Cohn on the board. So we have people who know, like, yeah, we know this person's good to speak.
Right.
And we make sure, like, much more, as best we can to try to get them on. But in turn, we're always looking for both more people, more speakers that are willing to. We're looking for, obviously, always more help. It's total volunteer. So like the team that we have all together is great for that.
Yeah.
But
can possible speakers pitch to present it?
Absolutely. We have forums on the site for pitching, for putting up job board, job positions that people are looking for sponsorship, etc. Kind of just standard things on that.
Offline, I'll mention a few people that might be good.
And I should mention, because that just happened, we just had ours yesterday on the 4th.
Yes. Yep.
And we had Joe Sinkwitz from just talking at our meetup.
Oh, cool. Great. So in the actual pitch, is there something that people should do, or like tips that you would have, like a great title or topic, or?
I'll be honest, we're not prestigious enough to be like, it must be in this format in this way and anything. I mean, we will take in and then kind of review based on your past presentation stuff, what you have in mind as a general topic. Like, if we just literally did, for example, we just did kind of around influencer marketing. Mm-hmm. All right, well, we just had that, so we want something else this time.
Right.
So like knowing kind of what our schedule has been in that way.
So people should look at the past presentations and then...
just know what our topic is. We put all of our things on Eventbrite, so it's at least usually been there. You can kind of see what the past ones were.
Yeah.
Things we're looking for potentially going forward are things like international SEO, or what other ones haven't we done recently? Maybe something much more in kind of the B2B space, or heck, even data space. I'll throw that in because I have to. But those kinds of topics that would be potentially fascinating to these folks, because we have a mixture of consultants, enterprise business B2B. So this can be both like massive brands to just like enterprise companies.
Right.
So those types of SEOs, and then another chunk of like some e-commerce SEOs as well. So kind of knowing our group for that will help to potentially give ideas for them to pitch to.
Sure. So Micah, it's been a great discussion. Lastly, can you tell everyone, direct them to all the places online you'd like them to visit? Twitter, LinkedIn, etc.
So you can pretty much find me online at Twitter, LinkedIn. I think I use the same for Steam.
No Google Plus anymore.
Yeah. I mean, used to be on that one. Obviously, I'm on Facebook too. Pretty much, you can mostly find me by just looking for Micah FK. Micah, first name, FK is the initials for my last name.
Yep.
That's usually the way to find me through most of those networks. And then I think outside of that, I'm on a few of the Slack groups. So if you're there, you can always ping me.
And the company you're with now is turnriver.com, correct?
Correct.
Great. Awesome, Micah. Well, thank you for joining us on episode 113 of Experts in the Wire.
Thanks for
having me. And we'll talk to everyone next time.